Hello, welcome to Ezekiel segment 7. This is our fourth session, our seventh segment. As last week, Sean, I told you at the beginning we're going to start doing topical. Our teachings are not going to go foul chronologically, but we're doing topical. This is for a couple reasons. The first is there is no way that we can cover the entire book of Ezekiel, all 48 chapters in 16 hours. That's the first thing. So we wanted to figure out how can we at least get a lot of it, get the information, the overall scope of it, get the context and the content that's in it. And then the second thinking in the way we did this is that if we would go chapter by chapter, you would be very, very discouraged, because the first 30 chapters are just a lot of judgment, lamentation, and woe. And so we thought, well, let's once we get to chapters 5 and 6, like we did last time, or 6 and 7, let's look at the destruction of the land, and then you'll see that in the end of Ezekiel, he gives the hope. And tonight we're going to look at his judgment upon the temple, and then the restoration of the temple. And actually, tonight's session, we are going to cover more chapters in the book of Ezekiel than any other night. We're covering 13 chapters tonight. Whoa. We're not going to read all that, but you'll see. We'll get into it. So I wanted to let you know a little of our thinking of why we've structured it like that for the remainder of the class. And then we'll come back towards the end to bring you back up to speed on everything in Ezekiel. So we're going to go now to Ezekiel 8, 6 and 7 were really a judgment upon the land of Israel. Now we get something new here in Ezekiel chapter 8. So if you would go there in your Bible. Ezekiel 8 verse 1, it says, "And it came about in the 6th year, on the 5th day of the 6th month." And now if you remember from chapter 1, he was in the 5th year, 4th month, 5th day. So we're about a year and 2 months after that, here now in chapter 8, okay? And by this time, remember, he's mute. He can only speak when God gives him. He's been laying on his left side and his right side, and he may still be in this left side, right side thing right here. I can't really figure out. I don't know for sure with the Hebrew calendar where we are. It might be, he might have just finished that, or he might still be doing this left side, right side thing where we are right now. But he's in his house, all right? So tonight, this is a really amazing section here, because we're actually going to go into a vision, and he's going to leave the country. But he never leaves his house. But we're going to get into this vision tonight, and it's really pretty amazing revelation. But here is physically, this is what's going on in exile in Babylon, among these exiles in Ezekiel's house. "In the 6th year and the 5th day of the 6th month, as I was sitting in my house, with the elders of Judah sitting before me." So he's there in his house, the elders. You get the idea that they kind of had a respect for this man. They didn't quite understand Ezekiel. You don't know if they really thought that he was a prophet, but he was a priest, and they would come to his house, and he got their attention. And so here the elders come. He's sitting with the elders of Judah in his house. He's mute, right? That's physically what's going on, all right? This comes back. We'll come back to this in chapter 11. But we're going to take a little vision trip here, starting in verse 2. All right? But physically, he's in his house. He's sitting there in front of the elders of Judah in exile. All right? Got it? You got the picture? He's mute. Okay. "And as I was sitting there before me, that the hand of the Lord Yahweh fell on me there." So he's sitting there in his house, minding his own business, and the hand of Yahweh comes upon him. "Then I looked, and behold, a likeness as the appearance of a man. From his loins and downward there was the appearance of fire, and from his loins upward the appearance of brightness, like the appearance of glowing metal. What do we have here? Now, I think it's interesting that the word man, the first word here, man, the appearance of a man, is the Hebrew word fire. And if you have a King James version, it's going to say he was the appearance of fire. It's pretty clear that it was a man on fire from the context. But the word man, in the Greek Septuagint, when the Greek was written, the word man was put in there. But in the Hebrew, it's the word fire here. But I think in most English translations today put the word man. But, okay, what you have is a man. Most English translations, except the King James Version, use the word man. This was a man on fire. He saw a man on fire. Okay. The appearance of brightness, like the appearance of glowing metal, or as one translation says, an amber glow. That was from his loins. So the appearance of fire, and from his loins upward. So it's like he had flames of fire, and upward he was like burning metal, an amber glow. What are we talking about here? What's he seeing? You know, I think it's like you ever see I know probably most of you. I didn't really watch too much of the movie, but the Fantastic Four. All right, and you had Johnny Storm. He would catch on fire. You know, if he could say, "Torch on," and he would be a man on fire. Yeah, all right. That's what you have here. You have Ezekiel sees a man on fire. You know, we think we're really modern today with all these things we put on television. This was over before 586 BC, like about 595 BC or so, that God shows this vision to Ezekiel. Here's one person's depiction of it. I kind of like this. As the appearance of a man from his loins downward, there was the appearance of fire, and from his loins upward, the appearance of brightness, like the appearance of glowing metal. So this is what Ezekiel sees this time. A man on fire. All right? Okay. Now what happens here? Verse 3. And he stretched out the form of a hand, and he caught me by a lock of my head. And the Spirit lifted me up between the earth and heaven and brought me in the visions of God to Jerusalem. So do you get the picture? This thing on fire grabs Ezekiel by a lock of his hair, and he takes him away over that vast 500 miles and takes him to Jerusalem. In the vision. You got it? It's wild, but this is what he gives him, this vision that he takes him up, picks him up. He's still sitting in his house. But this is the revelation. This is the vision that he has seen while he's sitting here before the elders. And he takes him up, and he takes him over the 500 miles to Jerusalem, to the entrance of the north gate, where the seat of idol of jealousy, which provokes jealousy, was located. Verse 4. And behold, here as he goes to Jerusalem, he takes him here. He's going to show him the seat of jealousy, which provokes jealousy. Verse 4, and behold, the glory of God of Israel was there, like the appearance which I saw in the plain. So he takes him over to Jerusalem. This man on fire takes him over to Jerusalem, takes him there, and there in Jerusalem, as he sees this, he's going to be shown the seat of jealousy. That glory of Yahweh that we saw in chapter 1 is over Jerusalem, is over the temple, with the cherubims and it's God with the rainbow flashing, different wheels going right. That's all here. This is part of the vision that he sees. All right. Now we're going to go. This vision is an action vision. He gets involved here. Okay. And he said of me, Son of man, raise your eyes now toward the north. So I raised my eyes toward the north, and behold, to the north of the altar gate was this idol of jealousy at the entrance. And he said to me, Son of man, Do you see what they are doing? The great abominations which the house of Israel are committing here, so that I would be far from my sanctuary. But yet you will still see more greater abominations. He goes, I got more to show you. Now, this was an idol of jealousy, was at the entrance of the temple. God is a jealous God. He introduces himself this several times. He does not tolerate idolatry. And I put this note on the verse up here on my slides, where when God introduced this in Exodus 34, he said, watch yourself, that you make no covenant with the inhabitants of the land into which you are going, or it will become a snare in your midst. But rather you are to tear down their altars, smash their sacred pillars, cut down their Asherim. For you shall not worship any other God. For Yahweh, whose name is jealous, is a jealous God. God sets this right at the beginning. He does not tolerate idolatry. And he tells Israel, when you go in there, you tear down the other idols. You do not intermingle with the nations. But by the time we get to where we are now, they were totally engulfed in idolatry. If you keep here in Ezekiel, I want to show you this one because I think it really speaks to the type of idolatry that was going on and these jealousy which provoked God. 2 Kings, back to 2 Kings. There were many bad kings, but the one that really brought in the idolatry towards the end for the nation of Judah was actually the father of Josiah, Manasseh. And in 2 Kings chapter 21, 2 Kings 21, this gives you a little bit about the abominations that were brought in by King Manasseh into the nation of Judah. And he reigned for over 50 years. So this was entrenched, by the time Manasseh died, this was entrenched in the hearts of the people. But he's the one that brought this in. 2 Kings 21 verse 2. He did evil in the sight of Yahweh according to the abominations of the nations whom Yahweh disposed before the sons of Israel. For he rebuilt the high places which Hezekiah his father had destroyed. And he erected altars for Baal, and made an Asherah, and as Ahab king of Israel had done, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served them. He worshipped the stars. He brought in Baal. He brought into Asherah, the female cohort of Baal, from that worship. For he built altars for the host of heaven in the two courts of the house of Yahweh. In the temple, Manasseh built these altars for the host of heaven, for the stars. He made his sons pass through the fire. That's where they offered their children in the fire at Tophet to the god Molech. He made his sons pass through the fire, practiced witchcraft, used divination, dealt with mediums and spiritists. He did much evil in the sight of Yahweh, provoking him to anger. Then he set the carved image of Asherah that he had made in the house of Yahweh, in the temple, and said to David and to all of Solomon, in this house in Jerusalem, which I have chosen for the tribes of Israel, I will put my name forever, and I will not make the feet of Israel wander any more from the land which I gave their fathers, if only they will observe to do according to all that I commanded them, according to all the law that my servant Moses commanded them. Verse 9. But they did not listen, and Manasseh, this king, the father of Josiah, seduced them to do evil more than the nations whom Yahweh destroyed from before the sons of Israel. So he seduced the children of Israel, God's people, to be more idolatrous than the nations whom they defeated. Verse 10, now Yahweh spoke through his servant the prophet, saying, because Manasseh, king of Judah, has done these abominations, having done wickedly more than all the Amorites did who were before him, and has also made Judah sin with his idols, Therefore, thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, behold, I am bringing such calamity on Jerusalem and on Judah, that whoever hears it, both his ears will tingle. I will stretch over Jerusalem the line of Samaria and plummet the house of Ahab. I will wipe Jerusalem as one wipes a dish, wiping it and turning it upside down. I will abandon the remnant of my inheritance and deliver them into the hand of their enemies, and they will become as plunder and spoil to all their enemies, because they have done evil in my sight and have been provoking me to anger since the day their fathers came from Egypt, even to this day. God was done tolerating. It was done. Now, historically, what happens here is the son of Manasseh, Josiah, is a great king. And when he turns 18, he finds the book of the law, and they read it, and Josiah rends his clothes, and he cleans up these altars. He tears down the Asherah. He destroys the Tophet. He gets rid of idolatry. He really takes a stand against idolatry. But you get the idea that although Josiah's heart was there, the majority of the people never really got it. Josiah reigned for about 30 years, then he died, and then his sons took over, right? We saw this in the session one, Jehoiakim, Jeconiah, and then Zedekiah. The two, Jehoiakim and Zedekiah were the two last kings that ruled. But, so, even though Josiah took a stand against it, these practices were still in the hearts of the people and still going on. And this is where it really came into Jerusalem, was under Manasseh. And this is when God said, that's it. I'm going to wipe them like a dish. And now in Ezekiel, we are now at judgment time. We are now time where this is it. And now what you have here, go back to Ezekiel chapter 8. What you have here now in Ezekiel 8 is God showing this incredible vision to Ezekiel to basically say, do you want to see what the problem is, Ezekiel? I am showing you what the issue is. This is what's going on. This is what my people are doing. And then he says, this is the idol of jealousy. That's the first thing he shows him here. Then in Ezekiel 8, verse 7, he goes on. Then he brought me into the entrance of the court. And when I looked, behold, a hole in the wall. Now this is a vision. You got it? He takes him into the inner court, and there's a hole in the wall. This is wild. And he said to me, Son of man, now dig through the wall. It's like, have you ever been in a dream where you go into some weird thing, and all of a sudden you're in the dream, and you're that's what's going on here with Ezekiel. He's got this vision. He says, here's the temple. There's a hole in the wall. Ezekiel, dig through that hole. So now in this vision, in this, whatever this is, he starts digging through this hole in the wall of the temple. This is a active, 3D active vision that he's engaged in. And he says, now dig through the wall. So I dug through the wall, and behold, an entrance. And he said to me, go in, enter in, and see the wicked abominations that are committed here. For I entered and looked, and behold. Now he goes inside the inner court of the temple, right? He goes, look around, Ezekiel. Look what is happening. And behold, every form of creeping thing, and beasts, and detestable things, with all the idols of the house of Israel, were carved on the wall all around. He goes into the inner court of the temple, and there's idols of animals and every type of creeping thing in the world that they had carved into the walls of the temple, that they were worshiping instead of the one true God. And then verse 11, standing in front of them were 70 elders. Now he sees in this room, he shows him these idols on the walls that are carved into the walls, and then there's 70 elders. of the house of Israel with Jazaniah the son of Shaphan, that must have been someone who he knew, or that they knew, standing among them, each man with censer in his hand, and fragrance of cloud of incense rising. He sees the 70 elders, these 70 elders, men of renown of the nation of Israel, in the inner court of the temple with these idols all around it, and they are offering incense, a sweet odor up to these gods. And he said to me, verse 12, Son of man, do you see? Do you see what the elders of the house of Israel are committing in the dark? Each man in the room of his carved images, for they say, Yahweh does not see. The Lord has not forsaken the land. And he said to me, you'll see greater abominations. I'm not done yet. I got more to show you. You'll see greater abominations which they are committing. Then he brought me to the entrance of the gate of Yahweh's house, which was toward the north. And behold, women were there, weeping for Tammuz. Tammuz is the Babylonian god of fertility. So he comes to the front of town, and there's the women, they're weeping for the Babylonian goddess Tammuz. And he says in verse 15, do you see, son of man? Do you see? Yet, you're still going to see more. There's greater abominations than these. And he brought me into the inner court of Yahweh's house, the very inner court of Yahweh's house. And behold, at the entrance of the temple of Yahweh, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs to the temple of Yahweh and their faces toward the east. And they were prostrating themselves eastward toward the sun. In the front of God's house, with their backs to Yahweh's house, they're prostrating themselves to the sun, to the host of heaven. He said to me, Son of man, is it too light of thing for the house of Judah to commit the abominations which they have committed here, that they have filled the land with violence and provoked me repeatedly? For behold, they are putting their twig to the nose. The twig to the nose is a ceremony, a gesture of nature worship. Therefore, I indeed will deal in wrath. My eye will have no pity, nor will I spare. Though they cry in my ears with a loud voice, I will not listen to them. Their hearts were completely engulfed in idolatry in the house of Yahweh. The vision goes on, chapter 9. Then he cried out in my hearing with a loud voice, saying, Draw near, O executioner of the city. Now the voice of God is saying, he calls an executioner. Draw near, executioner of the city, each with his destroying weapon in his hand. The executioners with the destroying weapons in their hand. Behold, 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with shattering weapon in his hand, and among them was a certain man clothed in linen with writing case in his loins, and they went in and stood beside the bronze altar. So he sees these 6 men, these executioners, come before the bronze altar at the temple with weapons in their hand. All right? This is all part of the vision that he's getting. And the glory of Yahweh of Israel went up from the cherub on which it had been to the threshold of the temple. So the glory of God lifts up. And he called the man clothed in linen at whose loins. So he had these 6 executioners, and there's this man with a writing utensil. If it was today, he would have had an iPad mini. All right? He would have had this. And the Lord said, Yahweh says to him, Go through the midst of the city and through the midst of Jerusalem, and you put a mark on the foreheads of all the men who sigh and groan over all the abominations which they are committed in the midst. So he tells this man with a tablet, I want you to take notice. I want you to go through, and anyone in Israel that feels bad about what's going on? Anyone here in Judah, Jerusalem, that is weeping about the abomination taking place, I want you to mark their forehead. It kind of reminds me of something coming up in Revelation, but this here is back here with Ezekiel time. In verse 5, but to the others he said in my hearing, he says to the 6 executioners, he says, now you go through the city after him. Let him get a chance to go find if there's anybody that's weeping. You go through the city after and strike. And do not let your eye have pity and do not spare. Utterly slay old men, young men, maidens, little children, and women. But don't touch any man on whom is the mark. You start from my sanctuary. So they started with the elders who were before the temple. And he said to them, defile. This is all a vision, you get it? It's a vision. And he said to them, defile the temple, fill the courts with slain, go out. Thus they went out and struck down the people in the city. These executioners now start with the sanctuary, start with everybody, and they go, anybody that doesn't have this mark on their forehead, the executioners are to kill them all. Man, woman, child, do not spare. All of them need to go. And as they were striking the people, I alone was left. In this vision he saw, they all were killed. And he's the only one left standing. Now, again, this is a vision. We know that there were people like Jeremiah. There was a remnant still there. But the vision is showing Ezekiel the utter heart of the people and the abomination that's in their hearts in Judah. And I fell on my face and I cried. I said, alas, Lord Yahweh, are you destroying the whole remnant of Israel by pouring out your wrath on Jerusalem? Are you killing everybody? And he said to me, the iniquity of the house of Judah and Israel is very, very great. And the land is filled with blood, and the city is full of perversion. For they say the Lord has forsaken the land, and Yahweh does not see. But as for me, my eye will have no pity, nor will I spare, but I will bring their conduct upon their heads. Then behold, the man clothed in linen at the loins was the writing case reported, said to me, I have done just as you have commanded me. Chapter 10. The vision continues. Then I looked, and behold, in the expanse that was over the heads of the cherubim, something like a sapphire stone in appearance resembling a stone appeared above them. And he spoke to the man clothed in the linen and said, enter between the whirling wheels under the cherubim, and fill your hand with coals of fire from between the cherubim, and scatter them over the city. And he entered in my sight. Now the cherubim were standing on the right side of the temple when the man entered, and the cloud filled the inner court. So what he does is he tells this man with the writing tablet, you go right in the midst of that image of the between the cherubims, and you get these coals, and you spread these coals over all of Jerusalem. Verse 4, then the glory of Yahweh went up from the cherub to the threshold of the temple, and the temple was filled with the cloud, and the court was filled with the brightness of the glory of Yahweh. Moreover, the sound of the wings of the cherubim was heard as far as the outer court, like the voice of God Almighty when he speaks. And it came about when he commanded the man clothed in linen, saying, take fire from between the whirling wheels, and between the cherub he entered and stood beside a wheel. Then the cherub stretched out his hand from between the cherubim to the fire, which was between the cherubim, took some and put it on the hands of the one clothed in linen, who took it and went out. And the cherubim appeared to have the form of a man's hand under their wings. Then I looked, and behold, 4 wheels beside the cherub. These are those wheels again. 1 wheel beside each cherub. And the appearance of the wheels was like the gleam of a Tarshish stone. As for their appearance, all 4 of them had the same likeness, as if one wheel were with another. When they moved, they went in any 4 directions without turning as they went, but they followed in the direction they faced without turning as they went. Their whole body, their backs, their wings, their hands, their wings, the wheels were full of eyes all around. Wheels belonging to all 4 of them. The wheels were all called in my hearing the whirling wheels. And each one had 4 faces. Again, the 4 faces. Verse 15, then the cherubim rose up. They are the living beings that I saw by the river Chebar. So this is the same image. Here it is in Jerusalem. And remember, this looked like this was a thing that could move. It was like a cart that would move the glory of Yahweh. And here it's over the temple, it's over the area. And they rise up from the ground, the wheels would not turn. Verse 17, when the cherubim stood still, the wheels would stand still. When they rose up, the wheels would rise with them, for the spirit of the living beings was in them. Verse 18, then the glory of Yahweh departed from the threshold of the temple and stood over the cherubim. So the glory of Yahweh goes over these cherubims on this cart, this vision. When the cherubim departed, they lifted their wings and rose up from the earth in my sight with the wheels beside them. And they stood still at the entrance of the east gate of Yahweh's house. And the glory of Yahweh, the glory of the God of Israel hovered over them. This was a chariot for God, the glory of Yahweh. And it rises up over the threshold. These are the living beings that I saw beneath the God of Israel by the river Chebar from chapter 1. So I knew that they were cherubim. I knew what was going on here. Each one had 4 faces, each one 4 wings. Beneath their wings was a form of human hands. And for likenesses of their faces, they were the same faces whose appearance I had seen by the river Chebar. Each one went straight ahead. So this is that same vision that he saw. Now he sees movement of this vision over the temple, over Jerusalem. Now he does a little thing here, little side note. Verse 11, moreover, chapter 11, verse 1, the Spirit lifted me up and brought me to the east gate of the Yahweh's house, which faced eastward. And behold, there were 25 men at the entrance of the gate. And among them I saw Jazaniah, son of Azur, and Pelatiah, son of Benaiah, leader of the people. I get the idea that Ezekiel knew these people. I get the idea that these names are known by the elders that he's sitting with. I mean, it doesn't say that here, but it kind of, he uses them by name. He sees them, he recognizes who they are, that he knows these leaders. And he said to me, Son of man, these are the men. These men right here, they are the one who devise iniquity and give evil advice to the city, who say, is not the time near to build houses? This city is the pot, and we are the flesh. Now, when we had our Berean fellowship, we had a little difficult time with that. The city is the pot. Because when I think of a pot and a flesh, I think of, getting in a pot and boiling, right? But that's not really the understanding of this phrase. The city is the pot, we are the flesh. It's not the sense of being cooked. Rather, this pot is in the sense of being protection. And they are the choice meat. It's a positive thing. This is the pot, we are the meat. We are the chosen meat who gets protected in the pot. That's what they're saying. Everything. See, we didn't get put in exile. We didn't get exiled. We're here. We got to stay. We're the choice meat in the pot, protected. Verse 4, therefore prophesy against them, Son of man, prophesy. Then the Spirit of Yahweh fell upon me, and he said to me, thus says Yahweh, so you think the house of Israel? For I know your thoughts. You have multiplied your slain in this city, filling its streets with them. Therefore thus says the Lord Yahweh, your slain whom you have laid in the midst of the city are the flesh, and this city is the pot. But I will bring you out of it. You have feared a sword, so I will bring you out of the pot. You feared a sword, I'm going to bring a sword upon you, the Lord Yahweh declares. And I will bring you out of the midst of the city and deliver you into the hands of strangers and execute judgment against you. You will fall by the sword. I will judge you to the border of Israel, so you shall know that I am Yahweh. This city will not be a pot for you. It's not going to protect you, nor will your flesh be in the midst of it, but I will judge you to the border of Israel. Thus you will know that I am Yahweh, for you have not walked in my statutes, nor have you executed my ordinances, but have acted according to the ordinances of the nation around you. Now it came about as I prophesied that Pelatiah, the son of Benaiah, died. Then I fell on my face and cried out with a loud voice and said, Alas, Lord Yahweh, will you bring the remnant of Israel to a complete end? Is this it? Now, again, this is a vision. I don't know if this guy literally died here, or if in the vision he died. I get the idea it might be both. Because at the end of this, you're going to see everything that we're reading here, he's told to tell those people sitting with him in the room that he's in. He's still sitting, right? He's still sitting in this room with these guys. But he's in the middle of this vision. It's kind of wild, isn't it? And he sees this man, this leader that these people know, fall down dead. And Ezekiel says, is this the end? And now here's a little bit of hope that God throws in here. Then the word of Yahweh came to me saying, Son of man, your brothers, your relatives, your fellow exiles, the people who you're with there in Babylon, and the whole house of Israel, all of them are those to whom the inhabitants of Jerusalem have said, go far from Yahweh, this land has been given to us for a possession. You know what they were saying? You guys in exile, Yahweh has forsaken you, this land has been given to us. And what he's showing Ezekiel is right here, they got it wrong, Ezekiel. They got it wrong. The ones with you, they're the remnant. That's what's going on. Therefore, thus says the Lord Yahweh, though I have removed them far away from among the nations, and though I scattered them from the countries, yet I was a sanctuary for them a little while in the countries where they had gone. In the countries where you are in Babylon, I'm your sanctuary. Therefore say, thus says the Lord Yahweh, I will gather you from the peoples and assemble you out of the countries whom which you have scattered, and I will give you the land of Israel. When they come there, they will remove all of its detestable things and all its abominations from it. And I will give them one heart, and I'll put a new spirit within them. And I will take the heart of stone out of their flesh and give them a heart of flesh, that they may walk in my statutes and keep my ordinances and do them. Then they will be my people, and I will be their God. But as for those whose hearts go after the detestable things and abominations, I will bring their conduct down on their heads, declares the Lord Yahweh. So what is he doing here? He's giving hope. This is what's going to happen in Jerusalem. This is a judgment that's passed. The hope is for you guys, the remnant. Now, with this awesome verse 22. Then, after he's given this vision, this is how this ends. Then the cherubim lifted up their wings with the wheels beside them, and the glory of the God of Israel hovered over them. And the glory of Yahweh went up from the midst of the city and stood over the mountain which is east of the city. And the Spirit lifted me up and brought me in the vision by the Spirit of God to the exiles in Chaldea. So the vision that I had seen left me. His vision ends. He has this vision, and the last thing he sees is that the glory of Yahweh departs. It leaves. And it goes, stands on the east of Jerusalem. I don't know if that's talking about over the Mount Olives, but it left the city. The glory of Yahweh left. Remember when when Solomon dedicated the temple, the glory of Yahweh filled the place. And now in this vision, what Ezekiel is shown is this chariot of these cherubims that we saw take the glory of Yahweh. It's removed from the temple, it's removed, and it departs. Then verse 25. The mute man now speaks. Then I told the exiles all the things that Yahweh showed me. So he's seeing this, they're sitting there, and now he opens his mouth and he tells them what we just read. So that they understand they have a shot at it. You here in exile. But as far as Jerusalem and the temple, I've left that place. God is not there anymore. And this, check this out. In your notes, I have it, but turn with me to 2 Chronicles 7. This is exactly what God had said would happen when the temple was built. 2 Chronicles chapter 7. So this is after all the dedication that Solomon did, and Solomon gives the great prayer during the dedication, and the glory of Yahweh fills the temple, and there's music, and they put in the service that David had ordained, and this is right after all this happens at the dedication of the temple. Yahweh gives them one last bit of advice at the dedication of the temple. And it says in chapter 7, 2 Chronicles 7, verse 19. 2 Chronicles 7, 19. But if you turn away and forsake my statutes and my commandments, which I have set before you, and go and serve other gods and worship them, then I will uproot you from my land, which I have given you. And this house, the temple, which I've consecrated for my name, I will cast out of my sight. And I will make it a proverb and a byword among the peoples. As for this house, which was exalted, everyone who passes by it will be astonished and say, why has Yahweh done this to this land and to this house? And they will say, because they forsook Yahweh, the God of their fathers, who brought them from the land of Egypt. They adopted their gods, worshiped them, and served them. Therefore, he has brought all this adversity on them. He told them. He told them. You know, and Sean was sharing last week, in the time of Jeremiah, the people were saying, you know, he's saying to him, don't say the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. You see, without Yahweh, without the glory of Yahweh, it's just a bunch of bricks and rocks and mortar and stones. I don't even want to call them precious stones, because what good are they? What good's the gold? What good's the silver? It's nothing. Once God is taken away, anything man built is nothing. But this is even worse, because the building is supposed to represent Yahweh. The people in the name of Yahweh, they're still saying that it's Yahweh's house, and yet in their hearts, everything about it was full of idolatry and abomination. You know, and this speaks to me today. I mean, I've been places like this in my life. You know, where I've been to cathedrals that are just ornate, that have gold and have incredible architecture and structure. And I've been in places where they burn incense in these cathedrals and these temples in the name of God, in the name of Jesus Christ. And on the walls of these temples, they're lined with idols. You know, and at those times when I've been in those places, you know the one thing I'm pretty sure of? God's not here. See, and that's why the things that we do, it's God's presence. That's everything. It's not the activities, it's not the buildings, it's God and His Son, Jesus Christ. It has to be central. You know, if we built this building, we did the best we had with the finances to build the best place we could do. But if God's not here, what good is it? Burn it down. It's nothing. That's what God is telling Ezekiel about his house. It's now good for nothing. It just needs to be wiped out. And that's exactly what happens during the time of Ezekiel. But there's a hope of a future temple. And after the break, we're going to go to the end of the book of Ezekiel and look at what he's promised for the future. All right? Let's take a 10-minute